over 20 years. And I said,
don't be afraid. Fear holds so many people back.
Boys, when we were kids, were playing in dirt with little tractors or
different aspects, different topics as far as entrepreneurship. Hey everyone, welcome to the Mandy and Eliot podcast show. We're doing something a little bit different. We're going to divide and conquer. I have a special guest on. He's not as beautiful as Mandy, but we have him on. He's actually a good friend, my handsome, distinguished fella. Jason Zamora, say hello to everybody. Jason.
How are you?
Beginning of the year, we're new you, new me. Everybody has that mindset, right? Coming in Valentine's, February, and then going into April, tax-wise. But this is more a financial segment. I take this to heart because unfortunately, growing up in my environment as a kid in small town and coming into San Antonio, I never had that family direction when it came to finances, especially with me. I mean, my father, one of the best things he ever taught me was how to shake a hand, right? And to meet a lot of people. But Jason, on the other end, as far as procuring monies and what have you, I see a lot of, especially in the Hispanic culture, that we're not groomed that way, you know. No. And then I come across people like yourself that I admire and like, wow, man, this guy knows his stuff. Mm-hmm. So I've leaned on you a lot on financial advice in the past, and I've known you for a long time. Yep. Hence why I'm wanting to bring you on to discuss this a little bit more to the people who can relate, people who are already involved in investments, and people who are just needing to get into the movement of it, and what age or when should they know, or tell me about money, man.
Yeah, man, there's so much to talk about with that. But it is true. I was reading a book called The Psychology of Money, and it talks about investing back in the day of, the Great Depression. So there were a lot of kids, families that saw how their family dealt with losing everything. And that generation, a little before baby boomers, just is adverse to investing because they saw the ramifications of how it affected their house. And then there were other, kids in this book, it mentions, that saw great success from investing. So based on those outcomes, they either adopted that investing was okay, or they just pushed it aside. And so, similar to you in our situation, I didn't know anything about investing and the benefits of it. I mean, I graduated from college with more student loans than I knew what to do with, but I did feel early on that because of that, I had a purpose to eliminate as many people as I could from being like that. Yeah. As successful as that was, it was my responsibility to alleviate the luck or the what if about being either successful at retirement or even saving enough money for your kids to go to school. So, yeah.
Well, tell me about that. As far as, saving and investing is two different things, right?
Correct.
So, most of the time we grew up saying, well, you need to save, but if your money's not working for you, where's the value in that? I mean, what do you advise? You have children. What would you advise them?
Sure. So I was thinking about that coming down here. My wife would tell you, I couldn't wait for my son and my daughter. Well, I didn't know I was going to have a daughter, but I found out I was going to have a son first, right? And so when Braden came along, I couldn't wait for him to get his Social Security number, right? Because the first thing that I wanted to do was establish his, 529, his college education plan. I remember thinking about it in the hospital and, wondering when I was going to get it. And
that's passionate.
And yeah, it was. And for the first time, I got to directly impact somebody, right? And so that was one of the greatest gifts I could have ever given him, despite all of the gifts he has given me thus far and still going to continue. But the dedication to it was really simple. I mean, it was kind of an out of sight, out of mind plan. Sam and I figured out what we could put aside and did it, and that was it. And, it isn't necessarily on a set it, forget it system, but it is. And so time is on your side. And it's an old adage that we hear all the time, but for children especially, it's an account that most people can set up for their children.
This is called a
529.
A 529.
And there's UGMAs, there's different type of accounts that at 18 the child will get.
Yeah.
And I think the conflict is, well, Eliot, how do I know that my kid's going to go to school or not. And so early on, it's like, well, I don't know if I want all of this put aside for education. In my mind, I don't think, the institution of college is going to go anywhere anytime soon. So I just want them to be prepared. And then when Blakely came along, it was very, very much just a follow through. So it really has helped. But yeah, I mean, aside from doing that, my wife was really big on having savings that wasn't tied to investing.
Okay.
And so that's really important too. I mean, just having money, for a rainy day is important because, as well as anybody with kids, stuff comes up.
Stuff comes up 100%.
All the time.
And, I see your kids on social media and your beautiful wife. And as far as the preparation, you have a nice family household. And I'm a girl dad as well, too. It's a special thing about being a girl dad. All glory to boys, but man, that the little girl has a father's heart, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
You want that preparation all the time. So, with that said, what would you advise? I mean, we're in 2023. Isn't it crazy that we're in 2023? I mean, high school just seems like yesterday, right?
Yep.
And but I'm going to be 49 in April, but is it ever too late to start investing? Is it something that someone needs to do for their kid at a young age, or do you need to be in your 20s? When is it a good time to invest?
Sure. And no, I mean, there's never really a good time, right? I've always said in my entire career, there's an event. There's something that occurs within a family, within a household that is eye-opening. So unfortunately, sometimes people feel, I don't want to say ashamed, but they feel like, well, I haven't started anything yet. I haven't done anything yet. So, I mean, I can't make that big of a difference. I just turned 47, right? And I still have a way to go with retirement, and the people that I help are in their early 60s, and they still are very hard on themselves because they feel, especially after 22, and even 20, right? 20, COVID is a blip on the radar screen now, but 22 was rough. And so to answer the question, absolutely, it's never too late. And I don't think it's ever too early either. I think the direction of your funds and the purpose of your money will gradually, naturally change its course. So if you're saving money and then you start to, consistently do well, then all of a sudden that money will have a purpose. For kids, as we know, it's going to be maybe to finance their education. When you graduate from that, you can complement it with a nice retirement savings. I mean, fortunately, most people still have 401ks.
Yeah.
And, a new year is a perfect time to kind of reassess all of that. But I think the biggest disappointment, to kind of reiterate what you said in your question, is the late response, or I started a little too long or too, not early enough, is something that discourages people because they don't see immediate results. And I mean, we can go into Starbucks and buy a cup of coffee.
It truly is a long game.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'd say 9 out of 10 people don't have the ability to look that far down the road.
Yeah.
Everything's now.
Yes.
Everything, especially with social media, is what can I do now? And I tell every single one of my clients, when you leave this meeting, you're going to drive home, or you're going to talk with your husband or wife or partner, and you're going to start to ask questions like, I wonder if what this guy is saying is really true. And the best thing about my business and my practice is that those things do come true over time.
Okay.
So the values established a few years down the road when, oh man, you know what? Jason said this was going to happen, and it did. Not necessarily how the market's going to turn out, but in essence, how their process of thinking was going to be at that particular moment in time.
Nice. And thank you so much. Tell me for that information, but tell me a little bit about your resume. You've been doing this for a long time, right? Well,
Yep.
How many years now?
27.
27 years.
Yeah.
Damn, you started you started when you were 20 years old.
I did, 21.
You
Yeah.
were 21 years old when you started. So you've seen the ups and downs and the anxiety some people may have, or monies, and when it comes to stocks and everything else. What advice would you give individuals? And again, this day and age, there's single dads as myself, and there's single moms out there, and a lot of moms are making a lot of money as well too. There's the female professionals are making way over 6 figures. I mean, and is there a stigma? Is financial advising or the person wanting to invest? Is it more relatable on the man side or the female side? I mean, you know what I mean? I didn't grow up with it at all. I'm learning. You know, I started learning about investing maybe in my late 30s, a little late in the game, I feel, because I'm always wanting to be ahead. But I guess it's never too late to invest, right?
No.
But what advice would you give when people are, hey, listen, I'm a single dad, or they can be a single mom. What areas can they play in the part of securing their future?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways to invest, right? And I think the popular way to invest right now is going to be something that somebody else doesn't see as fit for them, right? So, you know, I can say honestly, with single parents, you know, husband and wife, every situation is unique and different. And so when you're looking at investing that way, it is very unique and customized. And so that's what you should look for. I think before you get involved in stocks and bonds and, you know, risk versus return and all of these issues that you read about and hear about, I'd say hear about specifically, you know, with today's technology. But I think it needs to be, first of all, let me find somebody that I know and like, right? The know and like are huge. I think I've said this so many times, I sound like a rerun, but the know, like, and trust is everything. So as soon as you find that person, because it's like a relationship. I mean, you want, you know, strong, consistent communication.
Money's emotion, man.
Yeah,
it's sensitive. It's everything that you worked for.
You got to have dependability. You got to have accountability. So when you find that, regardless of what age, you know, that's where you start embarking on your specific plans. And I think you mentioned something earlier about financial, you know, advice, you know, or a financial advisor and a wealth manager. You should get a lot of financial advice when you're starting.
Okay.
And then as you start to establish wealth, right, whether it be through real estate purchases or, you know, savings, it's going to transition over into managing your wealth and, you know, preserving your assets and more than anything, eliminating longevity risk, right? What good is it to save all of this money if there's a risk of you running out of it?
Yes.
So again, I firmly believe the hardest thing anyone's ever going to do, and I can speak for my clients specifically, is really narrowing down who they want to go down that road with, just like we do in life. I mean, you know, I waited a lot longer to get married, and it was the best thing I ever did. I mean, you know, and finding my partner in Samantha, and I took my time, and I wasn't sold until I found that know, like, and trust. And I think it really just applies to everything.
No, 100%. And thank you for that information. You know, this is valuable information. Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to leave on the comments as well, too. We'll respond to that. But if there's anything that is, if you're not into investing or financial securities right now and you're looking for that interest, please reach out and ask any questions you want. Jason and I have known each other for a long time, and it does come with trust and relationships when it comes to money. Let's talk about 2023. There's a stigma right now, man. People are afraid to even buy homes, or they're holding their money. They don't want to invest it. What if type situations. Tell me about 2020. What's your feeling about 2023 right now?
Well, I wish it was, you know, positive. I don't think it's negative though. It's kind of what we're gonna call a balancing year. I've probably been through 6 or 7 23 outlooks with some of the largest money managers in the world that we use, and it's a pretty balancing year. 22 was very revealing. I think 22 was probably, I can tell you for sure, it was the hardest year of my career. Even surviving 08, 09, even going back to 2001, right? And, you know, we were very spoiled.
Yeah.
From 2009 to 2022, we had a great run. With 20 being said, we all as a community, no one escaped 2020.
Yeah, right.
But then we had the largest and the quickest comeback ever in the market. So
Crazy.
21 was sweet.
Yes.
21 was great. And then we come up to Black Friday of 21, and then the rain didn't stop until, I mean, some would argue it's still coming. So 22 was the government intervening and trying to lower this word called inflation.
Yeah.
And they took a very aggressive approach. They raised rates. And if you remember a year ago, most people's complaints were the price of gas, groceries, and if you could find any of those, really, not gas, but so much, we were still in that automobile kind of crisis, right? No one can find a car.
Yeah.
People got into buying used cars and selling cars. It was crazy.
So surreal.
Yeah,
I can't believe.
the real estate market was, people would give you $500,000 more than what your house was worth. That's went by the wayside. And so 23, I think hopefully early within the first quarter, at least second quarter, we should expect them to announce that we are officially in a recession.
Okay.
Most would argue that we've already been there, you know, unless you've just lived under a rock, right? And then are in denial. But most people would think that the hard things are pretty much behind us. What the Fed's trying to do is just kind of provide what they call a soft landing.
Okay.
They don't want to just directly throw us into a recession, but I think it's inevitable. And, you know, a lot of people forget it's a typical market cycle. The market works in cycles. And so this recession will be, again, like COVID was, a really good reset. But it's easier to look back on 20 and be grateful now than going back into 20 and wondering what the hell's going on, right?
I hear you.
In 23, it's going to be, all right, the good times are behind, or I'm sorry, the bad times are behind us, and now let's prepare for what's coming down the road. But, you know, even with that said, the most disappointing thing that I see and saw in 22, and even now with client reviews in 23, it's hard for people to see the opportunity in adversity. And I deal a lot with this now more than I ever have since I was an athlete and starting a business and a practice. But I firmly believe there's so much more to learn when things are hard.
Yeah.
And when
I agree.
and when you fail. And no one's failing right now. You know, our clients were very secure. There's no doubt that when they looked online and got their statements, their accounts were a lot lower than where they were. I shouldn't say a lot, but lower than where they were. And that had people question things moving forward, not who they were doing business with, but what adjustments do we need to make? And it was hard for people to go back and understand, you know what, I'm spending a little too much money here, and I need to kind of tighten up my budget. For people that weren't there yet, people that were saving, it was very discouraging. Why would I voluntarily take my money that I work hard for and just throw it away?
True.
And so people started putting money in cash, right? Well, guess what? We had record high inflation. We still do. Well, a little less than 7%, but we were 8% while the real estate market was just booming. So that moving forward is either going to be a resource for you to use. But again, in that adversity, we were glass half full, buddy. So optimistic. And I think that was the tiring part about 22, because trying to convince you and help you see, you know, the forest through the trees is very hard to do.
Yeah, it is.
And so I expect that to continue, I think, a little bit through 23. But I think after that, if you kind of sit in this lull longer than you need to, then, I mean, I don't know if anybody can really help you.
Yeah, true. You have to sort of just get yourself out of a stuck mindset, right? Wait it out and be knowing that, I mean, this has happened over and over, the
Correct.
ups and downs of the economy, you know? So history shows, a pattern shows, just wait it out. I'm
Correct.
assuming that's similar advice you're giving your seasoned clients.
Yep.
And how about new clients who are just wanting to reach out to you? What advice do you give them?
Well, it's kind of ironic that most clients kind of share their experience that they've had with a newer client, right? And we're fortunate now, 27 years later, to be a practice that grows organically. So typically, most of the clients, you know, similar to your business, are going to come from word of mouth from our current clients. And so based on their experience, some clients come in and they're a little apprehensive, right? They're not worried about the process and is this the right person in the right firm, but they're worried about the possible loss of confidence and money. And so what we try to do there, obviously, is just help them understand this is the only aspect in your life where it's beneficial to look back. you always hear, don't look back, don't look back. In anything you do, right? I tend to do that probably more than the average person because I think there's still things to learn from our past, right? But in money specifically, you just said it. Historically, things always end up better than they were before. And we use history as a tool, right? We look back and see those trends. We look back and see people's attitudes. And if you go back and look at stats and poll people in 2020 about what they should have done or could have done different, most people will tell you they didn't have enough money to put in the market in 20.
Yeah.
And now that we are here in 22, the focal point changed. And I thought about this before, when I was coming down here, was money wasn't an issue in 20.
No.
Everybody was concerned about their family and their health, period. Money was on the back burner. When I was going to retire, what I was going to buy, where I was going to live, was never talked about.
It was about health.
We almost canceled Halloween. Yeah. I know my mother-in-law delivered our Thanksgiving dinner to our front door.
Yeah.
I never imagined in a million years that I would have my Thanksgiving dinner with just my wife and 2 kids, and we did it. And then in 22, we had a huge paradigm shift to where now the focal point really is the value of accounts.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned over and over again, time will heal that, as it does anything. And it's very disappointing and discouraging to see people holding on to every second of every day. Yeah. And we all want to be present, especially in our kids' lives, right? But sometimes it's just an over exertion of energy when you just consistently expect things to get better overnight, because they're not. Yeah. And we don't know how much time we have, but I think we all could agree that we have more than we think we do, and things will pan out okay.
I'm going to ask you a question when it comes to money. Money it's security, right? It's financial. It's a sensitive topic to a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
So they need to lean on somebody they can truly trust, build a relationship. And when you're looking for a financial advisor or a wealth manager, that relationship is just as important as your marriage, because it actually secures your family.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So what should people look for when it comes to an advisor? I mean, you have financial institutions that have warehouses of financial advisors, and you have some that are, I don't know if you consider yourself boutique, custom. Where do you fit in that genre?
So if you think about advising and how it's evolved, before, back in early 2000s when I was getting started, there were just 3 or 4 large wirehouses that existed. So if you wanted to do and get into investing, your best path of success was to join one of those firms. That doesn't exist anymore. The boutique, independent, fiduciary, specialized family office is really what educated investors are looking for now. 2008 put a lot of those large wirehouses to bed. They were purchased by large banks. And so you're right. There are 2 different types of advisors, right? Some you'll hear the word like a wirehouse, or you said there's buildings across the country that house about 15,000 employees that all have the same licenses as we do. But here's the difference. Our service and our advice does not rest behind an 800 number or a website address. That is a big deal. There are certain types of people that don't value what we're doing here today. And if you think about one of my normal client appointments, it's this.
Yes.
Our first meeting has nothing to do with numbers. It's a fit meeting. It's, do I feel this individual has the attributes that I'm looking for to grow with? And as the advisor, we're looking to see if this person has the same attributes that include participation. Are they going to communicate when they're anxious? Are they going to attend reviews? Other people, what's the number? This is the last 4 of my social. I need help. And they don't value that they're working with Eliot or Jason. They really don't care if it's Martin, Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John that's helping them, right? But we are different. And nothing against that type of service, because most people what really influences that, Eliot, if we're honest, is cost.
Yeah.
And so because we're in a fee for service environment,
Okay.
people need to look for value, right? And so if you were with your advisor in 22 because of performance, you probably fired he or she going into 23, right? I can strongly attest that none of my clients are with me because of how well we do year after year after year. We've done very well year after year after year. But last year, I can't tell you the number of people that called and said, "What am I paying you again? Why did I choose this firm?" It had nothing to do with cost. It had everything to do with conversation. I just wanted to hear you tell me it was going to be okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to hear you tell me that things were going to be good.
Yes.
I appreciate you coming by. Typical of a friendship, right?
That's a relationship, man.
Yeah. Versus the other end. I mean, not to bring up Ghostbusters, right? But who are you going to call?
Yeah.
You're gonna reach out to an 800 number and get that kind of emotional fulfillment. And for a while, advisors were almost extinct, right? The iPad and the computer were going to put advisors out of business because all of the algorithms you could just go and input.
Automation,
Yeah, the automation was going to put us out. But emotion and relationship building are two things those types of devices will never do. And, we use those devices as tools to help predict what's going to happen. But I think that's really, the difference between advisors and the industry then and now. And I mean, it's something I love talking about with clients, because I think everybody has a movie mentality of what their retirement's going to be like. And at Live Oak, and you've seen this, we get to create that movie piece by piece by piece. And I think the best part is we don't really know the ending.
Yeah.
But as clients have those questions about how it's going to end, and they get those anxieties, they can call, they can text, and they do. But they're not worried about calling an 800 number, getting a representative who doesn't know them, that lives halfway across the country. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's just not the world that we live in, thankfully.
I haven't mentioned your firm. Forgive me for that. Live Oak Investors. Live Oak Investors. You're originally from Corpus Christi, right?
Yep.
Moved to San Antonio 94?
And 95.
95?
Yeah.
All right. And, as far as Live Oak Investors, what are the typical, you work with anybody? I mean, how does it, can anybody just call you and say, hey,
Sure.
what, I need some advice? How does that work?
Yeah, so I think, and to answer that in two ways. So the service that we provide all of our clients, first and foremost, part of what they pay for is for me to be a sounding board to anyone they refer us to. And sometimes they don't become a client, right? Sometimes it's not a good fit. But we do allow ourselves to listen and understand the situation, provide advice, right? Because life has different avenues and circumstances for everybody. So sometimes, most of the time, it isn't that people don't want to invest, it's just they can't. They've stretched their money, and and it's commendable. They're making things work. And we've all been there. And so, number one, we serve as a sounding board to help those people and provide guidance. And 9 times out of 10, if you do the right thing, that person's going to come back when they're able to stretch their legs a little bit more and be a little bit more, open to doing things. So, that kind of addresses who we help. And we really try to grow again from the inside, from the inside out. I don't want a revolving door practice. And so, yeah, the Live Oak really came from driving to Three Rivers every Thursday for 15 years.
Yeah.
Samantha and I talk about it all the time. I think I miss that the most. I think when I get to a point where I want out of the office, I'm trying to find all of these solutions to the madness that's going on. And the first thing Samantha will say is, just go see your clients.
Yeah.
Whenever you do that, when you drive to Three Rivers, when you drive to Carson City, when you drive to Corpus,
Yeah.
you come back with this energy that is why you do what you do.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think, and I think Live Oak, really started in that county, and I didn't, have any apprehension of naming the firm that.
Yeah.
We've graduated to be, a private wealth management firm.
Yep.
Private being that it's a little bit more close-knit, and, it's a multi-generational office, so, we're helping grandparents to grandkids. But that's what it was about. And it did start and root in those areas, because we were very fortunate being in smaller towns. And I don't know if people consider Corpus to be small, but I definitely know the house that I grew up was the house that I grew up in, single parent, didn't have all of the avenues that most of my friends did. And I look at my son and my daughter now, and man, my job is to provide.
100%.
And it's not that I don't want them to do what we went through, because that was good.
Yeah.
But again, there's a sense of responsibility because of that, that if I'm not helping other people avoid that or do that, then shame on me.
True. I'm a strong believer when it comes to seeking advice. When it comes to seeking advice, I look for people who have experience in that department or industry. If I'm going to hire a fitness coach, well, I want to make sure my fitness coach actually works out.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So as my marketing agency, I have an advertising budget I push out as well, too. So why would I advise somebody to advertise if I'm not advertising myself? Makes sense? One of the things I admire about you is that you practice what you preach when it comes to you, your family, and your personal investments as well. Also, I've known you for a long time, and life goes its own ways when family, marriage, and kids, and I'm a dad as well too. But catching up to you has been exciting. So exciting to where it's like, you know what? I think people need to know exactly what's going on with the economy. Your financial advice is very important. And I do encourage people, if it's not you, to reach out to an advisor.
Oh, yeah.
As far as what direction they need to go, whether they're starting in the beginning or they're seeking more information on investments they've already had seasoned within themselves. I mean, is that something that you talk to other people who have already have the experience in it and say, hey, listen, I'm looking for an alternative?
Yeah, for sure. Because if you think about, there's been a huge epidemic that's existed in the workplace since I got in the business. My biggest liability when I started in 1999 at New York Life was my age. And I never thought that would be my biggest asset. And so I've had clients tell me, Jason, this is a perfect fit because I know you're not going to retire before me. And on a more humorous note, you have a 5-year-old daughter. You're never going to retire, right?
Yeah.
You're working forever. And so I think what's more important other than where you work, right? Because we help a lot of people in different corporations, especially locally. I mean, I'm proud to say we help a lot of, HEB truck drivers. They've been working there 42, 43 years, average length of employment. We help a lot of people at USAA that are leaving, Citgo, Valero, all types of small refineries from here to Corpus Christi, all the way down to the valley, physicians, small groups. And I think the one thing there is that they don't get as much education as they should. In the workplace, the only place that you really can go and turn to is a computer.
Yeah.
And you got to go to www. You log in, hey, take this little test. This will tell you where you need to invest. And that was one of the things early on I swore I would always help people do. And I'll be honest, a lot of people didn't work in that space because it was pro bono, right?
Yes.
Well, Eliot, I can help carve out this, allocation for you within your 401k. And, if it works, just come see me 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But as a young advisor, I could afford to do that, right? I had the time. And so that I feel still is something we're strongly advocates of. I mean, because not everybody comes in the door and turns into a client right away.
True.
And I think that employees that are working today luckily still have a 401k, right? Pensions are turning into dinosaurs. They're going to be extinct pretty soon. And if you have this one vehicle that has so much weight in how you retire and how you live the rest of your life, you owe it to yourself to get as much education as you can on that. But don't just get it all from a computer.
Yeah.
Reach out to somebody that knows about retirement planning. And that's why, you know, as a professional, we have progressed and received designations from the College of Financial Planning in regards to retirement planning, to be able to take you through the steps of a pre-retiree living in retirement. And then essentially, like we've talked about before, planning your estate. How am I going to transfer this wealth that I've worried about my entire life to my wife and my kids? And so again, I think that's really, really important, but everybody gets there in their own time. So regardless of the corporations, we help.
Time has to be your asset. Time has to be your friend. You have to build that relationship with time.
Yep.
And it takes patience. And you got to be consistent in what you're going to be doing and understand that things come together in the end. And I love what you said, that it's one of the things that it's okay to look at the history, to look behind you when it comes to money, you know, to learn exactly how money has been working and everything else. You know, those of you guys watching, it's very important when it comes to monies, and I wanted this particular topic and bring a professional on who's experienced in wealth management, financial advising, whether you're starting out or whether you already seasoned and understand whether it's stocks or what have you, to make sure you do build relationships with the right people and ask the right questions. If this segment or podcast is something you need to share with somebody else, please do, and ask any questions you may want. Before I conclude this, I want to ask you two things. I'm sure there's an audience out there that's going to be watching who are actually young financial advisors.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you mentioned you started at 24, 25, 27 years later, you know, think about it, man. I mean, were there times that you were like, this is not the industry I want to be in? Or what advice can you give to that young professional who's gotten his license to get into the same industry you're in, and they're probably admiring the fact and like, man, I really want to be at his level. There's a lot of people in my industry who want to do what I do overnight. I'm like, it doesn't happen overnight.
No. I think, I mean, I remember driving back from Three Rivers. I mean, I can remember one night I told my business partner at the time, I'm like, this is never going to work. And it's not going to work. You know, we have so much information, and the audience is trying to decipher whether it's a sale or whether it's just a passion, right? And so it took a lot of coaching and advisors to an advisor to understand people. And people do things with their money on their time. It's impossible to get them to where you are in one day. Some people are there. Some people are just, you know, ready, willing, and able to develop that relationship. Some people have had a bad experience. I mean, Bernie Madoff made that, you know, pretty popular a few years ago, but that too, again, has made our industry so transparent. So you know who you're doing business with. You know who you're getting involved with now. The federal government, you know, the Department of Labor has done an amazing job of that. Hence why most advisors now have to charge a fee.
Yep.
Because if you're just giving advice, there's no accountability. Well, Eliot, I told you should do this. It didn't work out. Oh, well. When you're charging a fee and are a fiduciary, there's no accidents. You're 100% responsible for that other person, for the well-being of that other person, by definition. And so, I mean, my advice would just be to stay the course. I mean, again, don't sit there and wallow in your own self-pity, but it is part of it. I mean, I remember in my mid-20s, my friends took jobs. They all had benefits. They all had 401ks. They had pensions. They had insurance. And I sat on the balcony of my apartment just wondering what I was doing. I was at the office every morning at 6. I almost forget my 20s. I worked through them. But thankfully I had great managing partners. You know, I am so grateful for New York Life in my early career. There are several managing partners there that I will always claim are on my board of directors that I think about daily. I have friends that are in the industry, one in particular that I talk to all the time, and we went to college together. Wow. I mean, we were fraternity brothers, and, you know, we feed off each other. But for new people getting in, you know, it probably is going to be a little bit harder because of what we've been through. But if you want that later down the line, I would say, man, just look forward to that hard, because it's going to make that the end, if there ever is one, you know, so much more fulfilling. Because the other thing is that if you are getting into this business and you're serious about it, I always compare it to quicksand.
Yeah.
You're making promises to people that you damn well better make sure come true to the best of your ability. These people aren't getting into business with you so that 4 or 5 years down the road you can say, well, I decided to go into landscape design, or I want to do something different. It is an entire buy-in. And I think when people are meeting with you as an advisor, they know that. They know if this is a short-term thing. And I think it was early on in my career, right? How do I know Jason's going to be here for years to come?
Yep.
Even though I was shouting it at the mountaintops, right?
Yeah.
And now it's come full circle.
Wow. Well, I'm very proud of you. Congratulations. And, you know, I want to conclude this podcast and thank everybody who's been watching and the questions you're asking, and everyone who's shared this as well, too. Jason Zamora, Live Oak Investors, we're going to have his information on there. If you have additional questions, you can reach out to him. And thank you so much for your time, brother.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. I know I've been on you for a while to get this going. I mean, it's just been such a hot topic, you know, and being that we're in this position and, you know, we have the ability to help people.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, God, everywhere you go, it's all about money, right?
It's all about money.
It's like, and it's never been at a higher state. And I mean, even in watching television and football, I mean, in golf and whatever, I mean, there's some type of financial, you know, services commercial, and, well, this is how we're different and this is it. And I can't imagine as just an investor how you swim through all that information. But luckily, similar to you, you know, we've done what we said we were going to do. We've upheld, you know, the values that we live by. And that resonates into people, and they pass that information on. So thanks for having me. I appreciate
No worries. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Have a great 2023. And if there's questions, do not be afraid to ask. Ask questions when it comes to money. That's how I started, and I have good friends I surround myself with. Just ask questions. I don't know all the answers, but advisors do. Thank you so much, guys. Peace.
The Mandy and Eliot Podcast Show.